Hi folks, so in this video I want to go over the steps for creating a strong paper that I posted in the announcement. I'm actually going to show you some examples of how to do all of these steps while looking at a sample paper. So the first step, hopefully you're somewhere there, if not already finished already, write your draft. If you haven't already, watch the literature review planner to literature review paper video because that's going to show you how to convert the quiz or the document that you made into your actual paper. So that's the step that I'm already past in this process. I have done that. I have taken my planner and I have made this lovely sample paper. And I'll probably include this in the paper folder for you guys to look at if you want a sample to look at. It's pretty much exactly the same as a literature review, but I've converted it into an actual paper with all of these subheadings. So that's step one done. Step two, manually check your program's spell check errors. So I say to do this because when you're going through, sometimes we've gotten to a point where we almost block out the little red and blue squiggles. We just kind of ignore them. We also sometimes just are so used to autocorrect on our phones that it doesn't occur to us to manually go through and do this. This is a teacher's biggest pet peeve. When a teacher has to go through and be like, you misspelled curious, when the program that you have is trying to tell you here, yep, you misspelled curious. So you can go through and you can click on all of the underlined mistakes. The blue is typically spelling or spacing. The red is, well, actually, I guess it depends. The red is sometimes the grammar, the blue is sometimes the spelling. Either way, check them all. When we're going through and we're checking this, you can right click and pull this up and just change the word. Or, and this is something I recommend if you haven't done this in a long time, run the spelling and grammar check. Yeah, okay, so spelling is red. I think blue is grammar. When you're going through, all right, so I'm going to change that. When I was transferring things over, I must have messed up the spacing when I was changing wording. So I'm just going to go through and check this. That's a spacing issue. So I change that. That's another. Yep, there we go. Okay, if we look here, this is a really important one that I left in on purpose because it's catching the fact that when I converted my reference questions into paragraph format, some of my questions turned into statements, and you want to make sure you're using the right appropriate punctuation. So it's suggesting that I change it to punished, and that's right because I changed it here from if a college has a dress code are violators actually punished question to the statement, I wondered if a college has a dress code. So if you changed your question with something like, I wanted to look into, I was curious, I wanted to know, next I thought I'd investigate, then you've switched your question to a statement and you want the correct punctuation to go with it. Okay, so the next one is a spacing issue. So I'm just gonna hit change. This is a spacing issue I make all the time. So it's really good that I'm running this review because I really do make that mistake all the time. This one is one that cracks me up because I copied and pasted the planner over, which means I've had a typo in the planner that I've been using for like 2 years. So this is why you run spell check, folks. So I'm going to change that word to a lot. Make sure you are actually paying attention because if you just pick the first option, it's not going to make sense. You need to have some measure of control when you are doing the actual checking through. And then now it's mad at me still. Why is it mad at me still? Nobody knows. Sometimes it gets stuck on that, but that's fine. I know that that's right. And again, if you know something is right, like it keeps yelling at you to change somebody's, like an author's last name, and you have double checked and it is spelled correctly, then in those instances, ignore it. Use your discretion, but use the tool to help you because there's nothing more irritating to a teacher than having to be like, this is a sentence fragment on a sentence that's underlined by your spell checking program that's like sentence fragment. All right, so now we've got our lovely spell check. Looking good. All right, so that's step two. Step three, revise with one or more of the options for outside help. So I say one or more because I highly recommend you do a combination. So Smart Thinking is something that is provided. It is a free review service that also includes tutoring, and it is a wonderful resource. Why not use it? If you look on the course, go to underneath course content, you're going to see a module called additional resources. And one of the first ones is online tutoring help. And that's where you can find the external link for smart thinking. If it intimidates you, this is the video that I made you and included in the announcement. That's a walkthrough of how you can use smart thinking, particularly how you can use smart thinking to get a review for your grammar and your mechanics. So I recommend everybody does that. Send your paper through smart thinking. Aim for getting your draft there, between tomorrow and Saturday. Send a copy out because you're going to get individual, thorough review from that smart thinking from a person who is going to be able to do a little bit more intuitive digging in than a machine program like Microsoft Word spell check. Okay. So the next step, DTCC writing help is also linked right there under additional resources. You can click on this. It will take you to the virtual support center. And if you choose tutoring and writing support, it'll tell you that the hours are Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So you have the rest of today and you have until 4 p.m. tomorrow. If you're the kind of person who prefers to do some tutoring, it's virtual. You can also schedule a weekend appointment if they're available. If there's somebody who can help you over the weekend, so maybe on Saturday if you have time. This is going to be a helpful resource if you like to speak to another person directly back and forth. And this is also more helpful if you are having trouble with things like thesis statement or organizing your thoughts. This might be a more helpful source for you than what I've outlined for the smart thinking that you might want to do. And then Grammarly is the next thing that I have listed here. So I asked you, most of you, I think, advised most of you to include Grammarly in your or to get the free version of Grammarly. It's super helpful with things like emails, but it's also helpful because you can go into Grammarly and paste entire sections of your paper, and it will help you out. So I'm going to go, let's say, I'm going to choose this little section. I would choose the whole document and paste it in, but then it's going to mess with my formatting. So I just honestly, because I'm always logged into Grammarly, I just Googled Grammarly, and then I clicked on it. And then one of the options that pops up is new. So I'm going to choose new, and I'm just going to paste the little section of my paper. Control V. I'm not going to set any of that stuff because that's probably going to want me to do the premium, and we don't want to pay for the premium. So it's telling me I got some passive voice issues. I fight about passive voice all the time. What I really want to check here is the correctness. And I did a section of the paper earlier, and it caught things like subject-verb agreement issues that Microsoft Word did not. So it is slightly more sophisticated. I'm going to go back and see. I'm going to do another section of the paper. So I did the first section already. That was the second section. So let's try my summary. Let's see how that's going. Because really the section I recommend that you guys pay the most attention to. Did that do what I wanted it to? Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah. So the article explains some of the controversies. Perfect. And now, what is my other? Again, okay. That policies have created, including some protests against transphobia. Excellent. So you see what I'm saying about how it gives advice that's a little bit more in depth than the Microsoft Word checker was. So it says that there are 7 additional issues, but it wants me to go premium for that. I can kind of see them and maybe say like, all right, this is probably telling me it's a vague pronoun. This is probably telling me, passive voice. And I'm always fighting about passive voice because I like passive voice, but nobody else does. Yeah, exactly. So this is actually, it's highlighting some things down here that this is something I didn't catch, but I'm glad I saw. So it's telling me that, you know, I've got important twice. So maybe I'm going to switch that word to crucial. I can kind of see some of these problems. Maybe I don't want to fool with them. Maybe I want to fix some of them. Correctness is really where you want to focus your interest. And then I'm just going to paste it back into my paper. And check, make sure that all of my paragraphs are indented. And I'm going to go through and do that for each little section. Oh, and you know what? As I look through here, that should be in bold. And that should be in bold. All right. And then that takes me to the second to last step. So like for me, if I were going to do this, I would send my paper through Smart Thinking and I would use Grammarly, because why not? I probably use Grammarly and then send it through Smart Thinking. These are free services that make your writing better. Why wouldn't you? You've got the tools at your disposal. Use them. Check your references against the feedback I gave you. So if you check the feedback I gave you on the planner, I will have specific for each of those APA sections, the APA references that you did. I'm going to have like specific pieces of advice. Like, don't forget to italicize this, use sentence capitalization with this, don't forget to swap this, include this, change this. There's very specific advice that I'd like you to follow for your own individual sources. And the other thing I would like you to do is check it against the APA quick guide, which I did with this paper, which I wrote a while ago, and I noticed a mistake. So originally, when I copy and pasted this over, I had forgotten to put this in italics. The way that I caught that was that I was thinking, okay, so this is a web page. This is an article that is a web page on like an article. Yeah, I think it's just called article on a web page. So I'm going to pull up the APA quick guide. Let's see if I can find it. I did have it open. The APA quick guide is going to be linked in your, there we go. It's going to be linked in the instructional materials, and I'm going to try and do that for every single unit. And it's also going to be in the announcements. So the type of source that I'm looking at, and this is what you'll have to do, is figure out what type of source you're talking about. I'm talking about a web page on a website with an individual author. And then I look at my example and I look at the sample that's written here, and you can see that the title is in italics and the website is not. And originally, when I had transferred this paper over, when I had this from my planner, I forgot to put this in italics. So looking at that example is going to remind me that in terms of capitalization and italicization and what's included, everything needs to match. And so that just helped me catch a mistake. All right. And then the last thing that I would like to talk about is a bit of a new thing. So the last step, upon submission, check your plagiarism score. There is a tool that is enabled called Urkund, and you guys are going to see it differently than I do because your screens are always like that. Your D2L is set up differently than mine, but you should be able to go to tools in Urkund. If you look under this particular screen that I have, you'll see that this assignment is set up to display similarity report to students upon submission. So that means as soon as you submit your paper, you should be able to see a little bar with a percentage on it, and that percentage is the percentage that matches other sources. Typically, when you do this, you're going to get a base level of anywhere between like 2% and sometimes like 14%, 15%, and it's 16% I've even seen, and it's totally fine. This is not an automatic, like, you're in this range, you fail. This is just a tool to help us. So sometimes it'll flag something for plagiarism because it doesn't understand that you have cited properly because maybe you had an extra space between the words and the quotation mark you included. Or maybe it didn't quite read your citation, so your parenthetical citation appropriately. So just because you pop a number like 10% doesn't mean that your paper is 10% plagiarized. Don't worry about it. What I want you guys to do though, when you get that percentage back, is use it as a guide. Because if it's higher than 20%, you want to investigate it. It might still be fine, but it's worth looking into. So do that, and then you can submit your paper again and check your score again, and make sure that you're